no holes on it. The criminalist makes cuts to the back of the hoodie, makes cuts to the front of the hoodie. The exhibit, Your Honor, depicts those. There's a chain of custody document that describes the chain of custody for the hoodie and the cuts in the chronology. And of course we have Exhibit 88, which is the hoodie. So what Mr. Brennan did, and I'm now pulling Exhibit 88, he holds up the back of the hoodie, which has cuts in the back from the criminalist, somebody from the Commonwealth, a witness in this case, Ms. Hartnett, she's testified, and Mr. Brennan has indicated he wants her to come back and testify, which we welcome. And now what we have is we have holes in the back of the sweatshirt that were dramatically held up to and confronted with Dr. Wolf, and then the jury sees it. With the clear, unmistakable, purposeful intention of having the jury conclude that these holes could have come from events on January 29th of 2022, when in fact the Commonwealth well knows from its own documents, from its own criminalist, that those holes in the back were caused by their criminalist as part of their examination and sampling of the hoodie. What could be more egregious? What could be more misleading than that? And what could be more important for a context than the alleged collision that never occurred? That's the topic before some of the most significant and probative witnesses in this trial that the Commonwealth has been attacking from the jump of pretrial. They picked the most opportune, sensitive time to pull this stuff. This is intentional. This is irremediable. This is on the key issue of this case, whether there was any collision at all. On its own, Your Honor, on its own, this is a mistrial with prejudice. But I add to that what just happened, and I'm not going to repeat or go into other than to reference. This comes on just mere days after the Commonwealth raised the specter of absence of DNA on the same hoodie sweatshirt without having the criminalist, Ms. Kuhn from UC Davis come in. I know Your Honor already ruled on that.
Right,
and
so let's move along from that.
Right, that's what, and I'm going to come back to this. Why is this occurring, Your Honor? Why is this happening? The Commonwealth has no case. They have no collision. They are desperate and are trying to create evidence of specters of collision where the evidence doesn't support it. So what have we come to? We've come to the manufacture of evidence. We've come to, incredibly, taking a hoodie, a key piece of evidence in this case, and holding up to Dr. Wolf, the ARCA expert, to try to make it seem like Dr. Wolf didn't do his job. You didn't account for these holes. How could you be a credible accident reconstructionist when you talk about some holes but you don't talk about these holes? Knowing all along the holes that Attorney Brennan is trying to impeach Dr. Wolf on were caused by the Commonwealth's own criminalists as part of sampling. I don't believe one could come up with more misleading, misdirecting elucidation of testimony than this on the key issue in the case. We have irrefutable, objective evidence, and I will state that it's more than interesting that none of these exhibits that Your Honor now has marked for identification were put in evidence by the Commonwealth. Isn't it some coincidence that these are the one, and the only one of the, with regard to the hoodie, the back of it's not in, although the rest of them are, but these aren't. Your Honor, I think there is one and only one conclusion, in that this is intentional, that it is a matter of such significance and of such misconduct and intentional that it merits the sanction of a mistrial with prejudice. The amount of effort, the amount of work, I can't even begin to think to remedy this in front of the jury, to go backwards on this. That should not befall the defense. That should befall the prosecution. Ms. Reed, again, is entitled, like every other defendant in this wonderful Commonwealth, to a fair trial. The prosecution is supposed to be held to a higher standard, to do justice, to create a fair trial. This is the antithesis of a fair trial. Ms. Reed's rights under the Constitution and the Declaration of Rights have once again been trampled on, and it is becoming evidently clear the more desperate the prosecution gets because it can't prove its theory, including its own medical examiner can't support them, that they're now resorting to conduct like this. Your Honor, at some point, this has to come to an end. At some point, Ms. Reed's rights have to be protected. At some point, confidence in the judicial system, the public's confidence in the judicial system, that prosecutors will conduct themselves with their duty to present a fair trial. That has to be enforced at some point for Ms. Reed to receive the fair trial that she and every other defendant in this Commonwealth is entitled to.
All right, thank you. Mr. Brennan.
Your Honor, my brief review of the lab paperwork and looking at the hoodie, it appears that I made a mistake. And so I think what should happen is there should be a curative instruction. There should be a stipulation. The court should instruct the jury that during Mr. Brennan's cross-examination, he asked Dr. Wolf about holes on the sweatshirt or holes on the back of Mr. O'Keefe's sweatshirt. The parties agree the holes were made by a crime lab technician. This was done inadvertently but should not have been asked. The court should strike the questions and the answers. And you should instruct the jury there to completely disregard any questions or answers about the holes in the back of the sweatshirt. And the court should allow the defense to introduce the lab paperwork.
All right. So I'm not going to allow the mistrial motion, Mr. Alessi. What I'm going to do is instruct the jurors. I'm going to put in what's been marked for identification, Y, Z, A, and B. 4 of each letters. I'm going to put all these into evidence. They can be displayed for the jury, and I'm going to instruct the jury that during the cross-examination of Dr. Wolf, Mr. Brennan asked him about holes in the back of the sweatshirt and whether or not they perhaps could have come from events or implying or something like this. I instruct you, you are not permitted to draw any inference that these could have come from the events of January 29th, 2022. I instruct you further that those holes were made by the criminalist, Ms. Harnett, during the course of her inspection and sampling of the sweatshirt on, I just put the dates aside. Chrissy, can I see those, please? It's unclear for me. Do you have a better idea, Mr. Alessi, what day these were done? Is it all of those 3 days? Now I see a fourth day. 5/11, 5/12, 5/11/2022, 5/12/2023, and 6/18/2023. Those are the 3 dates.
Your Honor, on or about May 18th, when the defense filed a motion to test. So that's the probative date.
So May 18th?
Yes, that's good.
Okay.
And that's 2023.
Yep. All right. That's what I'm going to do. Is there anything further you want me to include in the instruction? Your rights are saved regarding the mistrial. I disagree with you on that.
Your Honor, I'm not going to go any more into the argument, but I appreciate the opportunity to provide perhaps some further instructions for Your Honor.
All right, so I'll hear you. Go ahead.
So the first, Your Honor, is with regard to two things. One, I would like the opportunity to have the hoodie sweatshirt held up, because that's what happened.
Yes. Yes.
These holes.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. So that's number one as part of the stipulation, and then
I'm not wording it as a stipulation, and I'm not saying it was inadvertent. I am giving an instruction that they cannot consider it for this purpose, and I am allowing these to be placed into evidence. So it's not a stipulation. It's from me.
just as Your Honor said, with the matter Your Honor said they're not to take an inference, I would respectfully request that this be handled just like Your Honor did with regard to the rock at 34 Fairview. Your Honor said that rock wasn't present, on or about the time of event.
So I do say that when I say Ms. Harnett did this. So rewording it just a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
Mr. Brennan asked Dr. Wolf about holes in the back of the sweatshirt. I instruct you that you are not permitted to draw any inference that those holes were a result of the events on January 29th, all right, this is what I'm going to say. So if you're not going to listen to it, that's fine. I've already said it. All right, we can bring the jury in. It's what I said, Mr. Alessi.
Your Honor, I was consulting with Mr. Alessi. I'm not showing disrespect to the court.
Okay.
Of course we were listening to you.
All right, so it's what I said, Mr. Alessi. I instruct you that you're not permitted to draw an inference that the holes came from the events of January 29, 2025. Those holes were made by the criminalist, Ms. Harnett, during the course of her inspection and sampling of the sweatshirt on May 18, 2023.
Is it possible, Your Honor, last comment, to instead of not drawing inference, you should conclude that these holes were not present in the hoodie sweatshirt. They were caused by the criminalist.
So I can just leave that all out then and just say Mr. Brennan asked Dr. Wolf about the holes in the sweatshirt. I instruct you that those holes were made by the criminalist, Ms. Harnett, during the course of her inspection and sampling of the sweatshirt on May 18th. It's probably neater that way anyway. All right, let's bring them in, please.
Judge, just as a housekeeping matter, the sweatshirt's been taken out of the plastic sheet, and it might need to be remarked. The plastic sheeting was marked, but the if we're going to put it into a bag or something like that, we might need to have it marked. But we don't need to do that right this second.
Okay.
May I approach Mr. McDermott with Exhibit
Yes.
88?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Oh, sorry. Mr. Alessi, you're simply going to stand and hold the sweatshirt, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Counsel, this is Exhibit 223.
And Your Honor, I would hold it as Your Honor begins to read. Is that consistent with Your Honor's expectation?
No, I want you to hold it up with the back.
What would you like me to start with?
You do that first, and then I'll give the instruction.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, so Mr. Alessi, why don't you just, where are you going to stand?
Pardon me?
Where are you going to stand?
I would suggest, Your Honor, right about here.
All right? So you can stand there, you can hold it up, then I'm going to ask you to put it down, and then I'll give the instruction.
And then I will return it to Mr. McDermott, or the court officer to return it.
Yes,
Thank you.
court officer.
Bear with me a moment, Your Honor. I'm going to be put on the...
All right, then we will take the luncheon recess. When we come back, we'll have the voir dire. Or actually, is Dr. Lapisada here?
She's here, but she's on next. I'm going to call John Tiedemann. T-E-D-E.
For just the measurements?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, if you're not going to be able to show the exhibits from Ms. Hartnett or the cuts along with the next step of instruction, show the cuts that were made by Ms. Hartnett. Along with
Well, I say it, and I'm going to tell her what they are, so.
Please be seated. Court is in session.
All right. Jurors, I appreciate your patience. Mr. Alessi, why don't you hold the exhibit up for the jurors, please? All right, jurors, that's the back of the sweatshirt that was shown to Dr. Wolf. Okay, thank you. Why don't you go ahead and put it back in the bag? So, jurors, I instruct you that those holes were made by the criminalist, Ms. Harnett, during the course of her inspection and sampling of the sweatshirt back on May 18th, 2023. Okay?
Carmelo Anthony's school district